Welcome back, my lords and ladies, to the Cast Beyond the Wall. We're your guide to all things Westerosi, and we're here to give you a review, analysis, and fan v fan debate of each episode of HBO's hit show, Game of Thrones. And we have finally made it to Season 7, gentlemen. It was a long, hard wait, but we made it. We fought through the White Walkers. We sailed through the Daenerys Sea. Wherever we're coming from, we all made it on this over-year-long wait to get to a new episode of Game of Thrones. Here today, we're going to be recapping and reviewing Season 7, Episode 1, Dragonstone. I'm your host, Caleb Masters. You better believe I'm going to have the last word, and it's going to be pretty damn witty when I do. And of course, I'm joined by my co-host from the desert lands of Arizona, Sir.
Austin Lucari, and I gotta say, strong showing by the Greyjoys this week. Hope you guys all enjoyed it, because I know I did.
2 hands, right?
Yeah, 2 hands.
All right, and I'm joined from the lands of bluegrass in Kentucky, sir.
I am Daniel Stoll, and I don't know about you guys, but Sam scenes were just a lot of shit this week.
Total shit scenes.
I got some surprises for you on that scene in particular.
Austin, are you going to say nice things about Sam today?
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
He's going to say nice things about Sam. Okay, we know that the end is nigh. You can track all of our posts this season on our social media channels, including Twitter, at cast_beyond_GOT, and on Facebook at facebook.com/castbeyondthewall. And of course, you can also find an archive of our last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones podcast on goodtrashmedia.com. Let's go ahead and get right into the meat and potatoes today of our talk and review of Dragonstone.
Enemies to the east. Enemies to the west. Enemies to the south. Enemies to the north. Whatever stands in our way, we will defeat it. We're the last Lannisters. The last ones who count.
Okay, guys, well, before we really get into this episode, wasn't it nice to hear the theme song play again? And wasn't it exciting to have the thought of, hey, I wonder where the map's going to take us next?
It was. I enjoyed the excitement of seeing a new place on the map this week. I had no idea what it was at first until like far into the episode. I was like, I don't understand what that Tower of Fire is.
Well, the Tower of Morgoth, or Sauron, or whatever, was a pretty as we find out, is a very important location. We actually got our first look at Old Town, which is where Samwell ended up last season, and for whatever reason they decided not to put it on the map last year in the season 6 finale. But it was so cool to see that crop up on the map. Always fun to get new locations, and this, of course, Old Town is where the Maesters go to study. All right, so let's go ahead and start things off with the opening. We're gonna start in the Riverlands this week. So we get an opening, and I was actually kind of confused for a split second until I figured out what was going on. We have Lord Walder Frey, who is having a dinner with his family. Now, at first I was like, wait, is this a flashback? Because we know he's dead. Arya killed him. So there was about 30 seconds there where I was really confused until I realized what was going on. And I'm like, oh no, Arya is wearing the mask. But basically, she goes in there, gives a very strange speech from the appearance and voice of Walder Frey. Apparently she rallied all of the most important Freys all together in one room and then poisoned all of them. And we're not just talking about, oh, I poisoned them and they died. No, it was like the most deadly, awful poison ever. Everyone was hacking their lungs out and blood everywhere.
Maybe I'm not the most pleasant man, I'll admit it, but I'm proud of you lot. You're my family, the men who helped me slaughter the Starks at the Red Wedding. Yes. Cheer. Brave men, all of you. Butchered a woman pregnant with her babe. Cut the throat of a mother of 5. Slaughtered your guests after inviting them into your home. But you didn't slaughter every one of the Starks. No. That was your mistake. You should have ripped them all out, root and stem. Leave one wolf alive, and the sheep are never safe.
It's like some Joffrey level of poisoning.
It definitely reminded me of the Red Wedding, except kind of like obviously the reverse of that because it's Arya this time. But Arya's bad, and she is not a good character anymore. While I don't know if I'd go as far to say as she's evil, she's definitely not good. And I don't know if people are getting that we're not supposed to really be like fully celebrating what happened here. I mean, she killed a lot of people, very, very much like the Lannisters have done, and we consider them to, most people consider them to be, some of the most evil characters in the show. While it was like definitely a badass moment for Arya, it was definitely like a scary moment. Geez, like she's really lost it.
I mean, look, has she lost it? Yes, she absolutely has. But you gotta keep in mind that these are people that have slaughtered her family in a particularly brutal fashion. Like, it's not like there isn't cause for her doing what she did. That said, I don't understand the point of this scene. Fine, Arya's a monster, we get it. Like, she did this at the finale of last season where she killed Walder Frey's sons, cooked them into a meat pie, and then fed them to Walder Frey. Like, you can't get any worse than that, so I don't understand what the point of this scene even really was, aside from trying to reiterate the point that they already made. I feel like this is time better spent on other storylines that at this point need addressing because we have very little precious time left with this show. So, I mean, ultimately, fine, whatever. We don't learn anything new about Arya. I don't necessarily have a problem with what she did necessarily. Like, we know she's kind of a monster, but like, I don't know, in some ways like a righteous monster in that she has reasons for what she does. But we already saw this. This has been done.
But Tywin Lannister had reasons for killing Robb Stark too, right? I mean, so I don't really think that makes it justified.
I think they are a little different. I mean, there's definitely a lot of similarities. And, Arya did spend a lot of time with Tywin, if you guys recall. I do think there are some differences where Tywin's was more of like proactive. Like, there wasn't, they were in a war, but it's not like the Starks had done anything like that to them before. This happened exactly to her family, and it's more of a revenge. Whereas Tywin's was more of a, I'm gonna end this before it starts type of thing. So I think there is some differences going on there.
Firstly, I just want to say, I mean, the motivation aside, the only reason this is designed as a root moment is because we've been following Arya since the beginning, and we like her and care about her. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, reasons aside, what she did was pretty extreme, killing an entire family of people. I mean, didn't we just criticize Cersei for doing that in the season 6 finale? I mean, so
I didn't criticize her, for the record,
because you're a bad person. That's why. Yeah, so okay, a couple things. What purpose does it serve? Well, it gives us a shocking moment for the cold open, which I think is a big deal for a lot of viewers. Firstly. Secondly, I think it's just to establish the plot point that the Freys are totally off the table. Now, I mean, I kind of assumed that last year when she killed Walder Frey, so I don't know if it was totally necessary, but, I mean, it is what it is, and I'm not really rooting for Arya anymore, so I think that the scene was really, really dark, but as you say, I don't think it's something we didn't already know. What I found way more interesting was actually the next Arya scene. This first one was, okay, cool, great opening, I'll give you a high five. As we're going to talk about when we get to our fantasy league deal, good big points for whoever picked Arya on their team this year. But outside of that, for me, there's not much to it other than the rule of cool, and I don't even think it's that cool. So, that's just me. But let's talk about that next Arya scene. This Arya scene is getting a lot of flack because of Ed Sheeran making a cameo. And to be fair, it's a pretty obvious cameo. They actually hold the camera on his face as he sings. It's not like previously we'd seen some cameos where you have musicians being Easter eggs, really small, like blink and you miss it, no big deal. This it's almost like the scene featuring Ed Sheeran. I don't want to dwell too much on the fact that he's in the scene because I think there's way more important things to talk about, but I do want to address the fact that him being in the scene did kind of was a little bit distracting.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they did a celebrity cameo, which is nothing new. They've done it before, but as you said, like, it was usually in the background. You had to look for it. Like, this was a scene seemingly made for Ed Sheeran, which is that's dumb. It's just dumb. That aside, and I felt like it took away a lot from the scene. It was a very long scene for not much payoff, in my opinion. It was a scene that attempted to humanize Arya a little bit and like try to get the audience to understand like how much she has fallen and what she still could have if she were to turn back now, kind of. But I think we already understand where Arya's at, and I don't think this really kind of changes our mind about her in any way. She very much has a list, and she's going to follow through on that list, and I don't think there's literally anyone that can stop her. I don't think Jon Snow could step in. No one will stop her from doing what she has vowed to accomplish.
I mean, I tend to agree with Austin on this one. I didn't really like this scene. I didn't really see its purpose too much. It, as Austin hinted at, it felt like this scene was for him to have this cameo appearance. Anything that we learned from the scene, I felt like we already knew, and I agree with Austin. I didn't see much of the purpose of the scene. Not that it was bad necessarily. It just didn't do much for me.
Okay, well, I think you guys are both high, and you're wrong. I think this is a great scene. So there's a few things this scene accomplishes. First and foremost, yeah, this is here to articulate how far Arya has stolen, how much humanity she's lost, and that there also is still a bit of humanity left in of Arya, because she doesn't kill these guys, even though they're wearing Lannister uniforms. She doesn't kill them, even though I'm sure that's her initial instinct. And what's really cool is that she talks to these guys and actually gets to know them a little bit, and they're all just thinking about going back home. And it's a great scene, I think, that highlights that outside of all of the craziness that's going on in the show that we watch, that everyone here are actually people. They're not all scumbags or evil monsters who go out and rape and pillage and kill people. There are a lot of normal people living in Westeros that have lives, and I think that's really important for the world of Westeros, for Arya to realize that maybe she's going down the wrong path, and she also does have a choice. I'm certain that she's aware that Jon Snow took Winterfell back. I mean, that was probably, I'm sure everyone has heard about that at this point. That seems to be the case, considering how fast Cersei can learn about other things. So I think that's probably a given for her. But yet she continues to go down the path of vengeance to stop Cersei. So clearly uniting with her family is not as important as her getting revenge. And firstly, I don't think that's been super clearly communicated because she hasn't had that option on the table before, one. And two, I also think that we do need to understand that for the plot to go forward. Where is she heading? I honestly thought she would. I mean, in the preview episodes, you can listen. I really thought she was going to head back to Winterfell when she learned that Jon had taken Winterfell back and she was back in Westeros. But that's not the decision she's making. And I think it's a really sad reflection of this character. I think not only do I think that it's helping put things in place, but it's a nice reminder to the audience that, one, she's taken a dark turn. Two, she still kind of has a bit of humanity in her. And three, she has a choice. And yet she continues to make the wrong choice. I think that's all great. I thought it was a really nice moment, unlike most scenes we get in Game of Thrones, because these guys were normal. So I don't know what you guys' downer on this scene was. I thought it was one of the better scenes of the entire episode, actually. Yes, Ed Sheeran does take away from it because it's distracting, but I certainly don't think they wrote the scene because they had Ed Sheeran in it at all. I think this was a grade A scene without him.
Well, a few things.
And him being in it's just a small distraction.
I don't think she's necessarily making the wrong choice. I think she's making the Game of Thrones choice, right? She's seeking revenge against people who have murdered her family. And specifically those people, at least to this point. If she goes off the rails and starts murdering random fools, then yeah, then it's gotten like kind of crazy. I don't think she's necessarily gone off her code that she's created at this point, right? She has definitely followed whatever guidelines she has set for herself and like rules she has set for herself. But if she were ever to stray from those rules, then I would definitely say that she's completely lost it at this point. But this scene in particular, I don't necessarily feel like I've learned anything new about her. I don't think she's changed. I don't think we've learned anything new about the world. I don't think we've learned anything new about Arya. I don't think it added anything. And again, I go back to like, we're running out of time to actually explore the world. And maybe this ends up being important. Maybe understanding that the soldiers have families, have lives, and are just kind of stuck in a situation that they want to be in. Maybe that ends up being important.
I know. Firstly, I do think it adds a lot, and I don't want to debate it too much. But we're going to come back to this when we look at the scene with the Hound. I think they're in a lot of ways accomplishing the same thing, because you're showing what do the normal lives of people who live in Westeros look like, and we see the cost of the decisions that our characters are having, and the impact that our characters are having negatively on the people who live in this world. And we see that with the Hound, and I think we have this here where, once again, Arya runs into normal people who are just they're part of a war they don't really care about, but it's kind of what you do in Westeros. You get drafted into the army, and they even mentioned that, hey, once you're of age, you get drafted in the army and you go fight, and you're probably going to die. And I think that's important. And it, again, is a really complimentary to the scene when we have the Hound, where we see the consequences of him and Arya's actions had back in season 4. So I don't know. I disagree. I think this does add a lot to the world. I think it adds an extra level of complexity to the characters as well. But it's my take.
If normal people end up mattering at the end of this story, if actually, as we have kind of talked about in the past, that the throne no longer exists, that we form some sort of form of democracy, then yeah, this scene matters. But if normal people actually have no power and nothing ends up happening with the kind of like white collar community of Westeros, then I don't know that this scene ends up mattering in the long run.
You're talking about the people with the world building and the people mattering. I think you can do that without Arya there then. I don't think you, like, Arya being there doesn't do anything then to that scene. Like, we as an audience should already know that her perspective and her being there in that environment doesn't change anything that we like. It doesn't reveal anything new about her character. Her character doesn't grow because of that scene, unless maybe down the line, like, she ends up growing because of it, I guess. But you can have that world building moment. Arya being there doesn't change anything about that moment then, if that's the angle that we're looking at.
The way you experience world building is through your characters. That's like everything. We're not going to have a random shot of people that has no impact at all. You just like in the books, you're witnessing the world through the eyes of the characters, so it wouldn't make any sense if you were to remove Arya from the picture.
I mean, she's a vehicle at that point. If it's only world building,
she is. All of our characters are vehicles. All of your characters are vehicles, and I think that she learned something from this scene. I think it has an impact on her, and it makes her think about things.
Well, we will definitely see down the road whether or not it does, but it could. We'll see.
Well, we'll have to wait and see and pick up this conversation later. I do think you guys are missing the point on this one. Anyway, we'll go ahead and move on to the north. We went back north of the wall, where we reunite with Bran, who has a vision that, guess what? The White Walkers are still coming, you guys. Except for this time, they're coming with Zom Giants. That was kind of a cool little vision, I guess. Again, not necessary. I think we already knew that the White Walkers were coming, but just a friendly reminder, very short scene to show how big and ominous the army is. But the more important part is that we found out that Bran made it to the wall, which is good. I think that's kind of it's an establishing scene.
It is really, really good to see Bran south of the wall again. I really want to see him reunited with his family. I think he plays a completely pivotal role in the end game of this show, and I'm excited to see where this goes going forward.
Yeah, I think this is just a table setting scene. I don't think there's really just to remind us where Bran's at, to check in scene, which is fine, especially for premieres. I think that's very passable. And we also see that Ed is the head of the Night's Watch. So
yeah, this is just putting the chess pieces in place. I'm excited to see what Bran brings. He definitely knows a lot of information. He's definitely been diving into his visions a little bit more and learned some information. It seems like off screen even. So I'm excited to see what he knows and how he's going to use that information.
Okay, very cool. Well, let's go ahead and move on to what I would argue is, one of the more interesting parts of the North storyline, which is we get to reunite with Jon and Sansa. They are strategizing in the North. Jon has summoned all the lords and all that good stuff, and they're all sitting in the Great Hall of Winterfell. And a few things. We get Jon Snow is turning the world upside down for Dragonglass, which is very important. We also see that he is ready to put everyone, men, women, and children, all into battle because he knows they need every person they can get to fight the war. And so that was kind of cool. We also got a really awesome moment from Lady Mormont, who's basically saying, what? You expect us to stay in the kitchen while you guys go off to war and fight the White Walkers? We're in this too, which is pretty great. It's good stuff. Now, I think the big kind of conflict here, though, we get is that Jon and Sansa don't agree on how they should handle the fallout from the Battle of the Bastards. We have this tradition versus what would be considered maybe common sense or maybe a more pragmatic approach. You have Jon, who wants to give the power back to all of the houses, even the ones that betrayed him, while Sansa believes they should reward the houses who backed them to take Winterfell. And Jon's not about that. He says, forget our petty differences. Let's unite to fight the White Walkers.
No, it's a very good scene. I think the central point of this scene is that no one believes Jon in that the White Walkers exist. They all say they kind of do, and then they kind of like, oh, okay, Jon, yeah, we're concerned about the White Walkers, but when you look at their faces when he talks about it, you can see all the actors really kind of portraying the sense of like, yeah, we don't really believe you. And Sansa doesn't believe him, which is why she kind of goes down the route that she does as far as like, we need to punish these houses. Ultimately, Jon, I think, sees the bigger picture that no one else sees, and that we need every single human that we can to fight this, because otherwise they're not going to win. Sansa makes a really great point later, which we can talk about then, but I think that the really central point of this is that no one actually truly believes Jon when he talks about the White Walkers.
Well, I don't think it's that they don't believe him. I think that they don't sense the urgency because they haven't witnessed the White Walkers. It's not. They're all like, yeah, it's coming. Just kind of like global warming. Oh yeah, it's coming, and it's going to be terrible and awful. But you know what? Nowhere. It's not a big deal. Like it's a threat that exists in the imagination, and even though it's real, it doesn't quite have that urgency that maybe for Sansa being worried about Cersei does, for example. And also, I think Jon has this one of his flaws, or at least in strategy, maybe not character flaws, but strategy flaws, is you're right. He does see the ultimate big picture, which is incredibly valuable. The problem is he overlooks the details. And if he can't hold his armies together for long enough, if he can't make his people happy while they wait and prepare for the White Walkers, he might not have an army to fight alongside him anyway. Which I think is what Sansa's trying to say.
I think Sansa was probably my favorite character this episode. But in this one small moment, I do think that I feel like I side with Jon in the sense that I really like the line that he said where he's not going to punish the sons for their father's mistakes or something to that effect, which I definitely, I think his vision of like he knows what's coming and he's trying to get as many people possible ready for that. I think he's right in this moment. And while I agree with Sansa on pretty much everything else this episode, in this one moment, I do feel like Jon, unfortunately, is not able to get people to understand like how serious this threat really is and how close it is to like being on their doorstep and how quickly they need to move. And they don't see that. Whereas Sansa definitely brings a perspective that Jon does not have, where she's thinking about how she knows Cersei, and as she talks about in a later scene, and how concerned they need to be about that as well. But I definitely like that this tension exists between them. I think it's very exciting to see on screen, and I can't wait to see more of it. These scenes were some of my favorites of the episode.
I think they're both right. It's just like a communication. Neither one of them senses the urgency that the other is trying to bring to the table because they lack that perspective. And Not just as in they're not listening. It's as in they don't feel that urgency that the other does about. Because I think they're both right.
They don't work yet. They don't yet work well as a team together. And hopefully down the road they will. But at this point, they both have expertise in different areas, which was very well highlighted, I think, in this scene. Particularly the scene where they're on kind of walking the wall and discussing kind of the previous interaction. If they could ever pull things together as a Stark family, I think they were well suited in order to handle any situation thrown at them. But at this point, they're still divided in some ways because they're unwilling to listen to the other person.
Right, and I mean, I think this segues right into the next scene they have, where Sansa compares Jon to Ned, Robb, and Joffrey for being stupid. She's like, I love Dad and I love Robb a lot, but God, they were stupid and got themselves killed. Don't do the same thing. And oh, by the way, Joffrey was a monster who also got himself killed in a roundabout way. Don't be that guy. And she's just trying to help him think through things. The problem is, though, he's really peeved off that she was kind of calling him out in a public forum, I think was really what got to him. He feels like she's trying to undermine him, whereas I think she's kind of more or less trying to invite herself to the table to have a conversation, because she thinks that I know that she's got to feel that she has some ownership of where their position is. He's still saying, but I am the king of the North, so ultimately what I say goes, and in this moment I'm not going to listen to you.
So what do you think Sansa's play is here then? I mean, she clearly, originally it was laid out that she was actually going to rule Winterfell, but in the season finale we saw everyone kind of really rally behind Jon and instead of Sansa. What is her play here? I mean, we see a little bit of an interaction between her and Bran and try to figure out, we know that Littlefinger really wants Sansa to be his wife. Does she go down that road? Does she try to stick things out with Jon and truly try to affect things from Winterfell, or does she go to the Eyrie?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think she goes back to the Eyrie. I think at the end of the day, I don't know exactly what the next steps are, but I do think at the end of the day she's going to end up ruling Winterfell. I have a hunch. Whether it's because Jon goes down to take the throne or he dies. What I'm really interested to see is what role is Baelish going to play? Because obviously he doesn't have the control over her that he once did, and she's calling him on his bullshit. So... which is interesting, because it's one, I think it again highlights how much Sansa's grown. She's stronger. She's not taking Jon's shit. She's not taking Littlefinger's shit. She's very much becoming her own woman, which is awesome. But on the flip side of it, Littlefinger's not there for no reason. He's got to have a role to serve. And I know ultimately he's going to try and sow some doubt between Sansa and Jon, but right now it doesn't really seem like he has much footing in the situation at all. I don't know. What do you guys think about Baelish?
I don't really know what his play is now exactly. I mean, obviously we know that he wants the throne and he wants it with Sansa, and that's what his ultimate goal is. Given this more interesting situation where the people have rallied around Jon, and she's not directly clearly ruling, I don't know exactly how he maneuvers himself in this situation, but I know Baelish, and I know he will find a successful way to do that, I think. Probably. But like we said, last with our episode last week, as we were preparing for the season, he is probably in his most vulnerable position that he's been in since he's very clearly put himself in Stark territory, and that's where he's he claimed them as the house that he's claimed or called. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know exactly how he's going to maneuver his way out, but I know that he's incredibly intelligent, and he will probably find a way out to where he is in the power position out of this scenario in some way.
You think so? I wonder if he's made himself so vulnerable to this point by declaring, basically his love for Sansa and what he actually wants.
I think
that he may not actually come out on top this time.
I think Sansa is his downfall. That's his commitment to her and letting her know that is definitely his downfall. And he's going to inch closer and closer, but she's going to be the thing that like brings him down. And I loved that she like went toe to toe with him in this week, and just called him out on his crap. And yeah, I love that. I can't. This is the Sansa I've wanted, the whole time, and I'm so glad that she's finally, reached this point. And I'm so excited to see what she does moving forward.
Well, I'm going to say this. I honestly don't. This is why I love Baelish so much. I don't know what he's going to do, but I guarantee you he's going to make a move soon. Some move somewhere. Because we're seeing him from everyone else's perspective the last couple of seasons. But remember, this is the Baelish who is giving monologues in the brothels in season 1. This is the guy who's got a plan. And he's very determined and ambitious. And I don't think he's just going to roll over and let Sansa take control of him. I think he's going to find a way to get the upper hand somewhere. Now, that could hit him. Now, in attempting to do that could get him killed. But I do think he's going to make a move of some sort. And I also think he's smart enough that he'll find a way. I'm not exactly sure what that's gonna look like. He's got me guessing. I'm not really sure, but I do think he's gonna make a move. And at the end of the day, we forget he could just up and leave them. I know what he's got us. We've all bought that he's hook, line, and sinker for Sansa, and he probably is. But at the same time, what if he just walked out tomorrow and said, "You know what? I'm taking my army back down south and declaring for House Lannister." What if?
And the Starks would be screwed in that scenario for sure.
Exactly. Sansa knows that they need him.
Yeah, maybe she bites the bullet and does what is required of her in order to maintain House Stark. I don't know. We'll see.
Great table setting. I think it set up the tension we're going to see between Jon and Sansa, and I think all of it was strong writing, strong performances. Overall, I was really happy with. And this is just the first episode. It's going to escalate in the weeks to come. We've got more stories to cover here in a minute, but first we're going to move on to our new segment where we talk about our fantasy league.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
That's right. We're kicking off a Game of Thrones fantasy league. After 4 years of podcasting Game of Thrones, we're like, all right, let's do a fantasy league. And let me tell you, the only way you're ever going to get me to be into a fantasy league I care about is to add Game of Thrones to it. When the idea was brought up for us to do this, it was very exciting. And I'm going to go ahead and pass things off to Austin, who's going to tell you a little bit more about how this fantasy league works, who the players are, and how it's going to go down this season.
What is dead may never die.
Yeah, so this is a fantasy league kind of run on a site called Fantasizer. I believe it's the people over at The Verge who kind of started this and kind of handle the scoring of everything. So you can start your own league if you want to, draft your characters, and really have a lot of fun throughout the season. We did our draft just a couple days ago with us three here, as well as some friends and frequent listeners of the show.
Yeah, we have a total of eight teams, I believe.
Correct. Yeah. So you get points on all kinds of different things. The categories are violence.
Any man dies with a clean sword, I'll rape his fucking corpse!
Sex and nudity.
The gods made this, and it delights me.
Wits and schemes.
There's no cure for being a cunt.
Status and power.
Power is power.
And finally, drinking and eating.
I drink, and I know things.
So you get things from everything like having sex with a family member, killing a dragon, taking the Iron Throne. So really kind of every character is kind of in play. You have, if you say a funny one-liner, you get 5 points, things like that. Kind of all the major characters in the show currently, as well as some new characters have yet to be revealed. Right now, as far as us three gentlemen here, Caleb is in the lead with 65 points. I am just barely behind him with 50 points, and Stahl just barely clinging to life down there with 5 points.
Not dead last, though.
No, not dead last. Unfortunately, one person drafted Sam, and they're at negative 25 points. So, that's what happens when you draft Sam, guys. I don't know what to tell you. I've been warning you for many years. Never rely on Sam. He's terrible, and this is where it gets you. However, we're all getting destroyed by a team who drafted Arya, who single-handedly got 110 points this week. which beats all
Okay,
of
let's
us
not
on
let's
a
not
round.
let's not mess around. Let's not get around. We're getting beat by team make Westeros great again.
We are.
Gosh.
We are. And they're destroying us. I believe Caleb, who's in second place, has 65 points, while the first place person's 140. So we're in bad shape, guys. It's getting real bad.
Tough. Well, I think at least the three of us, and if any of our other players end up being guest hosts this season, I'm sure we can talk about their teams at that point in time. But yeah, let's just go ahead. I think it'd be great to go over our different teams just so our listeners know where we stand.
Caleb has the Hound, who got him 35 points this week, and Tormund, who got him an additional 30, so he's sitting at 65 points. I am sitting at 50 points total. And I have Lyanna Mormont for her wits, got me 10 points. Euron Greyjoy got me 15. And Daenerys Targaryen got me 25. And finally, Daniel Stahl with a single 5 points from Jaime Lannister for his wits. So basically, some of these characters had status changes. Some had... And the majority of these are based on like witty remarks that they made. But right now, me and Caleb are pretty close, and Daniel trailing far, far behind.
What happened was once I was in the middle of the draft, and once all the power players were out of the first round, I was like, all right, we've got to go. I got to go strategic. So who can hit? I think my strategy is to hit on characters throughout who can hit all the different areas. So the Hound, of course, violence, sex, nudity, wit, status, and food. He has potential to hit all of those. So a lot of characters like that. I ended up with a lot of dudes, unfortunately. I got the Hound, Tormund Giantsbane, Beric Dondarrion, Braun, Thoros of Myr, one of the Dothraki named Quono, and a whore from one of Littlefinger's brothels named Marie.
Yeah, my team is rounded out with some strong characters right now. I'm sitting on Daenerys Targaryen, Euron Greyjoy, and the Night King. And then complemented by Lyanna Mormont. I have a few other characters, which we'll talk about if they become relevant at some point. But right now, those are the characters that have seen some screen time. Unfortunately, the Night King got me nothing for his scene, because he basically just rode on a horse for a little bit. I'm excited about where this team is going.
It's all about the comeback. A lot of my team is surrounded around the north. I got Melisandre, which you get points for doing magic. So maybe she'll do a lot of magic. Maybe get some points there. But I got Melisandre, I got Jaimie, and then I got Mira, Reed, and Benjen Stark. And I'm feeling like what I was thinking is maybe there'll be a lot of White Walker killing this season, or fights anyway, and either they'll get some good points in and kill some of them, or they'll have a memorable death, which you also get points for. So a lot of fighting happening in the north. Maybe we'll get some White Walker points, and maybe we'll get some good death points. So that was my angle, but a lot of that won't come until the end of the season. So like I said, it's all about the comeback story for me.
We will keep you updated throughout the season. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, I am taking the lead, but Austin is very close behind. Throughout the season, every week, we'll be updating you in our fantasy league. And, of course, I'll go ahead and post the link where you can actually look at the results in the show notes below. So make sure if you do want to see, kind of keep up with exactly what we get points for, specifically every single category, and who's in the lead, I will link our Fantasizer page in the show notes.
You don't fight with honor.
No. He did.
All right, so let's go ahead and go back to the Riverlands. I want to pick up with the Hound this time, because we got reunited with the Hound, who is with the Brotherhood Without Banners. And guys, winter has come. I know we've been saying it for a long time, but we revisited a scene that we saw in Season 4 that is now completely covered in snow. And essentially what happens is the Hound is with the Brotherhood Without Banners. I don't really know why he decided to stick around with them, but I guess he's just looking for something to do. So he's standing with the Brotherhood Without Banners, and they are, I guess, marching south. And they run into a familiar house that the Hound recognizes. Now, this is because this is the house of the farmer he and Arya robbed way back in Season 4. It was one of the episodes in Season 4, him and Arya were taken in by this farmer and his I believe it was his daughter, and eventually the end result was the Hound beat the guy up and they took their food and their money. So of course the father and his daughter both froze to death in the house. And this is interesting because the Brotherhood are trying to speculate on what happened. Of course, the Hound actually knows what happened to them. Now, that's a very down moment, and it does pay off by the end of the scene. But I really enjoyed the banter between the Hounds, Sandor, Clegane, and Beric Dondarrion. He's like, why the hell did the Lord of Light bring you back? You're as vanilla as they come, bro. You're not a special fighter. You weren't spiritual before you got brought back from the dead. You're just some guy. What makes you so special? Why did the Lord of Light bring him back? And basically, Dondarrion's like, the Lord works in mysterious ways.
Yeah, there's no real explanation as to why Beric Dondarrion is special. And it seems like we'll probably never get that explanation. Maybe he's just like a random dude. And that's it. Random dude who's decently good at fighting.
Well, isn't that how real life works too? Like, randomly good things happen to random people. Like, it's not always like this big destiny prophecy things. Like, sometimes good things just happen to people randomly.
Maybe Jon Snow is just a random dude.
Now that I don't buy. Jon Snow is significant. I'm backpedaling on that entire last statement. Jon Snow is very, very important. But we'll see. We'll see. And then the scene also concluded with basically Beric Dondarrion and having him look in the flames to see what he sees. They're trying to win him over to their religion. Now, I think the Hound sees them as very like dogmatic and kind of like zealots, but he's just kind of like along for the ride. He's like, sure, I'll look into your fire. And there was, again, good witty one-liner. He's like, of course the gods would stick me with a bunch of fire worshippers, because of his face. And he looks there, and it looks like he does appear to get a vision of the White Walkers marching on the wall, which, no surprise there. I don't think it's really a plot development as much as it's telling us that maybe Sandor Clegane is starting to drink the Kool-Aid a little bit. He's like, maybe there's something to this business. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I have a retort for you. And that is, I think this might have been the saddest scene from a fan perspective that I have seen in this entire episode. And that's because it may signal the end of the possibility of a Clegane Bowl. If he heads north to the wall, we probably will never see him fight the Mountain, and that makes me really sad.
Did we really expect a Clegane Bowl, though?
Expect? No. But hope? Yeah, there was always hope.
Listen, guys, I'm still waiting on... I mean, the Clegane Bowl would be cool, but I'm way more interested in seeing a Bronn Hound rematch from Season 2 at Blackwater, where they're like, oh, they're about to fight. Who's going to win? Oh, no. They teased us. So I'm still waiting for that one. I don't know. That's a good point, Austin. If they do head north, though, the chances of him fighting Clegane go down, although there is still the possibility they both survive somehow and end up in the Riverlands duking it out in a battlefield. Wouldn't that be crazy? But I think what's more important here about this scene is that the Hound feels bad about leaving these people for dead, killing them essentially. I mean, he didn't directly kill them, but he left them for dead with no food and no money. So he feels bad about it. And there's a nice little nod. He digs a grave for him, and there's a nice little nod to what's called the Gravedigger, which is a character from the books that has been rumored. Like, the theory is that he is the Hound, but the books haven't confirmed it yet. So this is just all but confirming that is definitely the same guy. He's digging this grave, and he says, he's like trying really hard to muster up the words. He's like, from the mother and I forgot the words. I'm really sorry I killed you. And I don't know, very somber moment for this guy. Like, I feel like this is only continuation of his redemptive arc. So not only did Ian McShane save him from the grave and give him hope and promise him that he could be redeemed, but he's actually taken steps to embrace that redemption, which is kind of cool. So I'm convinced this is all but confirming he's going to die, because they're making us really like him and feel empathetic to and hopeful about his arc, meaning he's going to die. But I still think it was a great moment for him nonetheless to kind of start to embrace his own humanity, which is something that was largely robbed from him the second the Mountain shoved his head in that fire.
We get to see a little bit of the Hound humanized, but I felt like we saw that prior to this anyway, when, you know, he's hanging out with all the religious zealots who he didn't really buy into in the previous season. And he basically freaks out when they all get killed and murders all their killers. Did this add anything to that? No, I don't feel like it really did. But we do see now that the Hound is probably going to go north. He's going to march north. He's going to fight the White Walkers.
You don't think him apologizing for killing someone's not a big moment for him?
I don't think it's a moment that we hadn't already seen. No.
When did we see that moment before?
I felt like the righteous Hound had already been displayed when he was trying to basically get revenge for all the people who had taken care of him.
Yeah, I think this was an awesome side of the Hound. We don't get as many like funny one-liners back in season 3 with the chickens, but I do like this piece with the Hound. It's definitely redemptive, and him recognizing what all that killing really means, and finding some remorse in that, I think is definitely a huge character turning point for him. And then the fact that he turns around right after that and looks into the flames and does see something, maybe there's a little bit more to life for him. And maybe, moving forward, he sees, maybe he can do something good instead of just being a merciless killer or dog, where he just stands next to someone and does their bidding for them. So yeah, I definitely loved this. I thought the Hound for as a character piece, it was really great.
Okay, cool stuff. Well, let's go ahead. I think so. We've got a little bit of contention, but mostly more or less like the scene, maybe not to varying degrees. So that's really cool. I do, just before we move, I just really like the callback to previous seasons, both from a character perspective, showing how far our characters have come, and also just showing revisiting locations that are now changed by winter. I think it's really cool. But let's go ahead and head on down to King's Landing, where we catch up with Cersei and Jaimie, and they both recognize that they're in a pretty tough spot. And Jaimie actually calls Cersei out for not having any allies, and she's kind of like I think she's kind of in denial. She's like, "Oh, we've got this. We're the only two Lannisters that matter anymore. Everyone else is dead, so it's just you and me. It's you and me versus the world, babe."
She fully understands she has no allies. I think she's just like, what else are we supposed to do? And she has a plan, which we'll go into later, but I think she is fully understanding of her situation. She goes through, she says, look, we have enemies to the east, enemies to the south, enemies to the west, and enemies to the north. We're completely surrounded. There's no one else left but us. And she basically sets herself up as the savior of the Lannister family for the alliance that she is trying to form currently. She really blames Jaimie for putting the family in the situation that they're in right now, saying, look, we're in this situation because of the brother that you let go, the brother that killed our father.
It's interesting that she kind of turns to Jaimie, is like, we're the last two left, and it's kind of this poetic moment for her, it's just me and you, we can do this together, when she's kind of been crapping on him during this own conversation, and through the past couple seasons. She's not been all lovey-dovey, me and you together forever for the last couple seasons. So it's kind of interesting that obviously she has no one left, all of her children are dead, she has no one else to turn to, so she doesn't really have another option. But it's kind of well, you kind of screwed yourself there, because you didn't really you weren't treating him well anyway. So I love that Jaimie's willing to just sit there and call her out on all of her crap, which he would be less likely to do in previous seasons. So I definitely love their dynamic, and I am waiting. I can't wait to see that tension increase throughout the season.
Did Jaimie do that though? Because I was expecting him to say, look, you personally basically killed all of our children through your actions, and he never did that. They tried to talk about Tommen here a little bit, and she deflected it.
You're kind of right, Austin. He doesn't go all the way, but he's politely saying you don't have any allies, and it's kind of your fault. He doesn't go all the way to call her out you killed our children, and I think he could push that. So in that sense, you're right, Austin. He doesn't go all the way, but he's, not taking her, he's standing against her in some ways, in ways that he wouldn't have before. So he's taking those steps in that direction.
Okay, yeah, I actually am going to side with Austin on this. I think he still kind of got walked on, because firstly, I mean, yes, he basically he tells her she's full of shit, but also says it not strongly enough, not assertively enough, and kind of just accepts her decisions. Because I mean, even though he's like making jabs at her the whole way along, he's not ever really taking a stand against her on anything in particular. She's like, yeah, I've got an idea. I'll bring Euron in. And he makes a jab about how dumb it is they're going for Euron, but he doesn't actually try to stop it.
Yeah.
He just kind of takes it.
Yeah, it was totally a milquetoast response. Like, he didn't... Yeah. There was no firm stance.
No, not at all. Not at all. He doesn't call her for her sins. He didn't be like, why the hell did you blow up an entire group of, like, why did you blow all those people up? And he has very personal reasons, I think, for being troubled by that, because, again, he killed the Mad King for trying to do the same thing. So I think he very well could have really, really called her on her shenanigans. And Cersei, this is a textbook abusive relationship, right? Because she's been doing this to him for seasons. I mean, if you remember back in season 5, she gets mad at him because Marcella was in Dorne, which he had nothing to do with, and he sends her there. He goes and tries to bring her back, and then when he gets back, she takes a crap on him for letting her die, and then sends him away. Well, I guess Tommen sends him away, and the whole time, all he's thinking about is trying to get back to her. And yet, she doesn't appreciate that at all.
I think we see in the scene is Jaimie's true dedication to Cersei and Cersei alone. He loved his kids, but ultimately, he did not love them nearly as much as he loved Cersei. Which brings us, I think, to the next scene, in which we start to see Cersei taking steps to essentially place a wedge in their relationship, in order for political reasons, of course. But if we see a scene in which Euron basically is trying to form an alliance with Cersei, basically gain a marriage with her. And if that's the case, I think that's the point in which Jaimie finally rejects her.
I mean, obviously, I think he's going to snap and turn on her, but at this point, I mean, I don't know what she could do. I mean, marry Euron, I guess, okay. I don't know. Just because...
I think that's it. I think that's the trigger, yeah.
He's more or less a friend of... He's more or less a, air quotes, brother with benefits. Like, she only wants him when she needs something, and then when she doesn't, like, she doesn't appreciate all the stuff he does for her whatsoever. But then gets mad at him when he doesn't just do what she says. So I don't know. It's abusive. I think he is going to snap on her. It does seem to me like he's already been around the ringer with her more than a couple of times. Now let's talk about that Euron Greyjoy scene, though. You know what, Austin? You and your obsession with them Yoho pirates and such. I gotta admit, when he said he's going to build 1,000 ships, he built some pretty badass ships. Let's be real.
I don't know how he did that in a couple weeks, because I think in real life that would take decades to build what he built. But they were beautiful ships, weren't they?
He's like, I'm going to build the best ships, the biggest ships you'll ever see. You won't believe it. They're huge. They're greatest. You're going to love them. Somehow, his small magical hands, they appeared, and there he goes.
You know, the Greyjoys are a special family. They do things that no one else can do, including have really, really great scenes with some witty dialogue.
Okay, this is the wittiest, best, probably the best Greyjoy scene in the show so far, because this guy was fun. He was having a blast. He got an audience with the queen and then made fun of both of them and called them both idiots the whole time.
It was fantastic. I could not be more proud of the Greyjoy family.
But this is the bad, Austin, this is the bad Greyjoy. This is the scumbag Greyjoy.
I'll take what I can get, man. Come on.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, what did you make of the scene? The guy is offering, he wants to marry Cersei. We thought earlier, last year, he was talking about Daenerys, but now it's pretty clear that he just wants to get with the queen so he can marry his way into some power. Makes a lot of jabs at Jaimie.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, and I don't know if you guys can shed some light on this, but he's definitely after a marriage with Cersei, which I think is actually a smart move for him. I don't think he has a lot of friends at this point. His sister's already grabbed an alliance with Daenerys. What I'm curious about is if he were to marry Cersei, does he become king? Does he leapfrog her in power?
Maybe officially, but she's kind of Cersei, and if you value your life, you don't ever leapfrog her or joke about leapfrogging her or even pretend you're going to leapfrog her in any way.
But if that's the case, if like according to the rule of law, he is king, I don't think Cersei ever follows through on this because I don't think she risks her power at this point. I think she just strings him along and tries to use him for as best she can.
Well, I mean, which is what she does here, right? Like, she turns him down, and he says, oh, no, I'll go get a gift. I'll bring you a gift that'll win your heart in our marriage. So about that gift, what are we thinking? I mean, I think the most obvious option is Tyrion Lannister. She hates him. She wants him dead, and she blames him for all of her problems.
I totally agree. I think that seems to make the most sense, but I don't know how he would possibly pull that off.
If that was the case, he already missed his opportunity to get Tyrion. In my opinion, they should have known that that's where she's coming in. So like, why was like that? Why in the world is that castle empty? And that gets a little bit into her scene, but like that was he had 1,000 ships. Why is he not sitting there ready to like do something when they come in? It's kind of like where that was his chance to maybe pull something off.
That's no. You guys are talking about going to war, okay? Listen, he's not going to do that. He's going to summon his pirate ninjas to go in and sneak inside and kidnap Tyrion. You guys are going the wrong way. He's not going to go to war with dragons. He's not. I mean, he's a little over the top, but he's not that stupid.
I mean, I'm not saying they like. From my understanding, that's like a very, very defensible keep. Like if you are. That's not like easy to get into. Like you are only coming in from water. Like you don't have any other avenue except to go in right at this area. I mean, like it seems like a pretty good strategy from my point of view, I guess, is there should be some sort of like, don't let her get to the ground. Like they're very much like, what are they going to do? Turn around and go back? Like, I don't know. I feel you're right. There are dragons, but I mean, I don't know. It feels like there should have been some sort of resistance. She shouldn't just be able to land and just walk on up into the castle and start planning. Like, I don't know, that feels like it shouldn't have been that easy.
So well, first of all, Stannis previously occupied that castle. Jaimie had stated that the castle was empty. Stannis apparently took everybody, which admittedly is a little weird that he took every single person. But even if it did have a few people in there, Daenerys has dragons.
They're going to raise their hands. We surrender, dragons.
There was never going to be an actual contest. Euron, if he wants to go straight up war with Daenerys is going to destroy him with 3 dragons. Like, that's it. It's over. The ships are flammable. It is completely 100% over. That being said, while Tyrion seems to be the most obvious choice, it makes me think at this point, and like there have been various theories written online, that maybe Tyrion isn't the gift that they are proposing or they are looking to give. That it's something different. And there's certain things that are like really only mentioned in the books before. So maybe we shouldn't get into that on this show, but it could be a different gift altogether than we're anticipating.
I think that what we're looking at here is, I think that no one would actually try to attack Daenerys head on. Still, you raise a good point. There's some weird timeline stuff going on for sure. I think in a show like this, there has to be some suspension of disbelief. I mean, Sam's storyline, when and how long did that take place? We don't really know. It's kind of weird. Doesn't really match up. Seemingly doesn't match up. I'll say this, and in the books, and I'm not going to be a snobbish book reader and say, oh, in the books this happened. He does address that. So Dragonstone was still actually occupied by a small legion of Stannis' men who Cersei sends everyone. It's not a spoiler at this point. So Cersei send a bunch of people down to Dragonstone to take it back, and the attack is led by none other than Loras Tyrell. And the reason he goes in was because he was promised vengeance for Renly Baratheon, his former lover. And so in the books, they go in, they conquer, and actually Loras succeeds. He comes back with like no arms, no legs, and he's roasted to a crisp because he was fighting fire people, but he's still alive. So that's kind of where his storyline's at currently in the books, but he doesn't get blown up. But that is a thread that is addressed. It's like, why is this castle empty? Well, I don't, in the show, and I don't think it's a big deal at all. I don't really care. But in the books, they're like, okay, yeah, well, we actually did go in and take the castle back. So just to kind of make that a little more legitimate. But I don't know. I think I don't think anyone. We don't know how big Euron's legion of ships is compared to Daenerys's. I think Daenerys is probably still bigger. 3 dragons. Yeah, I think he's not that stupid. And I think what we're going to look at is if it is Tyrion, then it's going to be some sort of sneak attack or kidnapping. But you're right. I think it would be a lot better. And this is Game of Thrones if they surprised us and it was something entirely different altogether. Speaking of Sam, do we want to go ahead and talk about the Citadel?
Yeah, let's talk about the Citadel.
Okay, very cool. Well, it seems that Sam has made it to his dream. He has made it to the library. And apparently, as according to our fantasy league game, that once you go to learn at the Citadel, you're demoted to a TA, a teacher's assistant level position, where you lose points for joining to study. And he's doing some pretty shit jobs.
I mean, he was a respected member of the Night's Watch and now is cleaning out poop.
I mean, respected's a strong word, Austin. I mean, kind of disrespected, actually. But yes, he was a member of the Night's Watch, and now he's actually cleaning up shit.
It was a funny montage. I personally enjoyed it just from the sheer hilarity. It had been funny no matter who it was. It made it especially sweet that it was Sam, but I like to call it the poop and soup montage. It was hilarious. It was well edited, had a musical quality to it with the sloshing and the plopping. Overall, really great opener to this sequence here.
You know, Sam's purpose is just because he's going to find out some information that is very important, and that's all that really his plotline is going to matter for, which did happen.
Here's how it really went down, though. Not only we've known he's going to be there to find some crucial information, but we didn't know he was going to do it by sneaking into the restricted section of Hogwarts Library. And in fact, he actually even encounters Professor Slughorn himself watching the restricted section of the library. And we get a great monologue where Sam is very serious about the cyclical nature of humanity, and Slughorn says it's all rubbish, and it was great.
Yeah, it was a really ridiculous, honestly, statement that the Maester made there, in which it's like, oh, yeah, well, you know, everyone thought the world would end at this point, and it didn't, and everyone thought the world would end at this point, and it didn't. And therefore, you should know nothing and definitely not share information with anyone because it'll all be fine. But what he fails to look into is, at those points in time, did anyone share information with the people in charge? Was there a free movement of information? Did they know what would kill the White Walkers and all of that? This Maester is just assuming that there wasn't, while Sam's like, yeah, people survived because they had information. They understood what it took to win.
Well, and also they're facing the apocalypse. I like how he's like, oh, you know, everything just kind of took care of itself. No big deal.
Is a tremendous sense of arrogance with the Citadel. It's like the Citadel will always stand. Everything collapses around it, but the Citadel will always be there. I kind of hope that the Citadel just gets completely destroyed to prove a point, but that would probably not be in the best interest of everyone living.
Well, and I actually think that this is a good analogy. I mean, this is obviously the Citadel. They're talking about churches. And it just reminds me of a lot of the stances you'll get on global warming or something. Oh, hey, this ominous, terrible thing is destined to head towards us. And if we don't do something about it, it's going to kill us. No, it's going to be cool. Everything's going to take care of it. The world will take care of itself. It'll all be fine. The church will be here no matter what.
Yeah, it could be churches, universities, institutions in general. Old institutions in which they feel like the status quo will always be, and it won't. If they choose to ignore this threat, they won't. And luckily, it really pains me to say this, unfortunately, Sam is the hero in this situation by breaking the rules, finally sacked up, went into the restricted section of the library, grabbed the books that are necessary. In fact, Gilly helps him find the actual clue that will probably save all of Westeros.
He finds out that basically Dragonstone is sitting on a well of dragon glass. It's a giant dragon glass resource, actually, which, that's kind of obvious, I guess, but also very key piece of information that he's going to want to get to Jon, who, hey, earlier in this episode said he was all about turning the world upside down to find some dragon glass. I also really appreciated that the cameo they were showing the dragon glass, the Valyrian steel and things like that. They actually, one of the pictures was of the dagger from season 1. The dagger that Littlefinger said was Tyrion Lannister's that actually led them to war. That was a nice little Easter egg there.
I did not notice that. Thank you for pointing that out.
Lots of little Easter eggs like that in Game of Thrones.
We did see another friend in the Citadel this week.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Austin. A friend that you swore was long gone forever. And I said, no, he'll be here. He'll be back.
I was very surprised. I thought he was long gone. I didn't think we'd ever see him again. I thought he had a decent send-off already. But apparently, as you guys stated, as you predicted, he still has a role to play. And we got to see Jorah again.
Jorah Mormont, he returns in his full mutant dino Turok form with a mutated hand covered in grayscale.
I mean, Dany asked for him to be his rock, and, that's what he did.
I think I always assumed he went to Valyria. I actually truly did not expect for him to show up in the Citadel. It was pretty surprising to me. But it makes sense. It's a center of knowledge that could help treat his illness.
I shouldn't expect for him to show up this early.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, actually. I was expecting him to show up towards the end of the season doing something. I wasn't sure. And it was really funny. In one of the trailers, you see that his hand reaching out, but it's really not it's not obviously his hand. I think that the factor in this episode that gives it away is that it's his voice, and he's asking, did the Dragon Queen make it yet? That really key us in that this is Jorah Mormont. I don't know if it's possible to heal him. I think it's probably impossible at this point, actually. However, I do think he's going to do something really important before he goes out in a blaze of glory. But it was good to see him back. Let's go ahead and move to the last storyline for the week, which is going to be taking us across the sea. Daenerys, after 6 seasons... almost 6 seasons in the movie, you could say, really. Daenerys finally made it back to Westeros. Now, she ran out of Westeros when she was just a baby, and she's finally returned to her home of Dragonstone. And this was a big moment. A lot of people have complained that there wasn't enough talking, and I'm game. I think this is a moment that merited silence, actually. And I appreciate that there was almost no talking in the scene. It was a big, monumental stepping stone for that character. Still, what did you think?
I agree with you on the no talking. I definitely think this was a moment where any talking just lessens the moment. So I agree with you on the no talking part. Although it didn't hit the emotion that I felt like it was supposed to hit. I didn't feel like, while this is her moment, I didn't feel like, yes, she's here. Which, to be fair, I'm not Dany's biggest fan. I've always kind of been annoyed with her. So maybe my own personal bias coming in, but it's she's in the game now. I didn't feel that, but I do agree that any talking just would have ruined the whole moment.
It did. I didn't get the emotion I was hoping to get of Daenerys is finally in Westeros, hurrah. I didn't get that, and maybe that was the point. Maybe it wasn't supposed to give you that feeling. Maybe it's like, look, there's still a lot of work ahead, which it did kind of drive home. I think that point where she somberly goes up to the castle. She's like, yeah, I've achieved something, but this is the dilapidated, kind of filthy castle. It's not the grand thing that maybe not she, had in our minds. And the first thing she says is, let's get started. Let's get to work. She realizes instantly that there's a lot of work ahead. So while it wasn't what I hoped it would be, because I wanted her entrance into Westeros to be this big triumphant thing, because we've been waiting for it for so long. We did, however, get to see a really detailed look at Dragonstone and in some ways the history of the Targaryens through the architecture, which I did appreciate.
Yeah, I agree with you on architecture. I don't know. I felt the moment pretty well. I mean, obviously, I didn't expect her to just ride up on the shores of Westeros and start burning people with their dragons. I knew that was they're going to be more strategic than that. I don't know. To say that I felt uplifted and was going nuts, no, but I got chills. I got chills when she was walking up in there, especially when they got back to the little strategy room when they were looking at the maps and the tables. I was like, oh, great men stood here. Her father probably stood there. Her grandfather stood there. And obviously we know Stannis stood there. I thought that was really cool. It was a really cool scene. I loved the quiet. I loved the quiet. Again, my biggest problem with this scene is that I was not sure when our gang became members of the X-Men. They all had these colorful costumes, and then they all walk in wearing black leather. I'm like, just go, guys, what the hell? Who's doing the wardrobe? Why did we all turn into black leather people? Apparently they thought it was time to ditch the spandex and dress in black.
They saw Euron Greyjoy and they're like, that man knows how to dress.
And that should be our next game. Cast X-Men with Game of Thrones characters. Okay, well, I think that about wraps the episode, our discussion here. Overall thoughts, before we close out, what was your if you guys were just going to give your big takeaway from the episode, what did you think?
I think it was put all the pieces in place. We're good to go, and let's see where this season takes us. But just table for what's to come, and I'm ready to get this season going. I think this has the potential to be one of the probably more crazy. I don't know the word I'm looking for, but has the potential to be one of the most ridiculous seasons of Game of Thrones. Like, there's still all the big characters are in the same place, ready to have some big moments, and they set the pieces, and I'm ready to go.
This season, by requirement, should be one of the most action-packed seasons. We don't have a lot of time left. There's a lot of ground to cover. You have to solve the Iron Throne and figure out what to do about the White Walkers. This opener, I didn't feel covered enough ground for me. Maybe in some of these scenes, which I feel like were inconsequential, end up mattering down the road. To me, the strongest scenes were Euron and Sam. I felt like they forwarded the plot and really got things moving. A lot of the other scenes I didn't get the same sense out of. But regardless, I'm really excited about the storylines. Everything's kind of converging right now, and I'm really excited to see where the rest of the season goes.
Awesome. I think this was a really above average table setter. It was a table setter. Make no bones about it. This was setting things up. This is checking with our characters, reminding us where they were at in the finale, and also kind of like repositioning them from the finale a little bit. Not really making too much advancement. I think it came with a few great character moments. For me, the MVP was definitely the Hound, Sandor Clegane, and the Brother Without Banners. That was a big highlight moment for me. I also really liked the Arya stuff, the second Arya scene. I really did. I liked that scene quite a bit. And a big shout out to Euron Greyjoy. I had a lot of fun. That scene with him just calling out Jaimie, lots of fun. Overall, this is a table setter. I think Stoll's definitely onto something. This is, in fact, the stakes are the highest they've ever been. Personally, for us as viewers, I mean, and our characters, of course, too, but for us, because our characters, that we love characters on all of these sides, right? And all three of these kind of factions we have here, we love characters in all three factions, and at some point they're going to be going head to head, and when one of these people dies, we're going to be attached to them no matter what. If Daenerys dies, we're going to be sad. Jaimie dies, we're going to be sad. Cersei dies, I'm not going to be sad, but the show's going to be missing something, that's for sure. Sansa dies, we're going to be sad. Baelish dies, I'm going to be weeping in my bed for nights. What happens when characters you love kill characters you also love? And I think that's really the point we've reached in the show. So when Stoll says this is going to be ridiculous, I totally agree. This is going to be an emotionally charged season, no matter how you look at it. And this is like the deep breath before the plunge. After this moment, it's going to be full speed ahead towards the conclusion. And I think the first things first, we're going to be dealing with the King's Landing stuff, Cersei, before we actually turn full attention to the White Walkers. But I think we have a great season in store, and I think among Game of Thrones season premieres, this is probably one of the best yet. All right, thank you so much, gentlemen. I think it's about time for us to wrap the show. Now, before we prehash next week's episode, I do want to remind you that you can find the Cast Beyond the Wall and all of our episodes on our iTunes page. I do hope you'll head on over to iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, or any of those podcast apps to give us a rating. Subscribe first. Please do subscribe. That way you have new episodes that will be sent straight to your device every week. No more waiting around for our episodes to post online. Anytime we post an episode, it'll go right to your phone, your iPhone, your iPod Touch, whatever the case may be. It'll be sent right to you. And if you're a new listener, please hop on to those platforms, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, and give us a rating. It'd really help us out, give us a big bump. There are a lot of Game of Thrones podcasts out there. And whenever you give us reviews, whenever you give us ratings, that helps us get a little more attention among other listeners. So I really hope you'll go ahead and do a review. If you've enjoyed the show, go ahead and give it a rating. If you've hated the show, give it a rating. We want to know. We want to know what you have to say and what you think. Let us know by giving us a rating on iTunes especially. It would be great. I also want to remind you that you can find us on Twitter at cast_beyond_GOT, or on Facebook at facebook.com/castbeyondthewall. And of course, you can find our last two seasons of content, that is season 6 and season 7, on goodtrashmedia.com, or seasons 4 and 5 on wegotthiscovered.com. Gentlemen, before we prehash our episode, can you let our listeners know where they can find you online? Austin?
If you want, you can follow me on Twitter at ACLucaria. I'll post random things about video games, Game of Thrones, anything I found entertaining. Do you want to follow me there? You can.
You can follow me at Daniel Stull, the numbers TCBtW23. Definitely check me out and tell me what you think. And you'll definitely find a lot of esports, League of Legends stuff on my Twitter feed, as well as all things really nerd. So yeah, send me a tweet and I'll be happy to chat.
All right, and of course, as always, you can find me on Twitter at CMastersTalk. That's letter C, Masters Talk on Twitter. You can also find me on Instagram and Letterboxd if you want to keep up with my movie viewing habits at CMasters91 on Twitter and all those social media platforms. I'm going to be talking a lot of Game of Thrones right now, but also movie reviews, TV shows I'm interested in, games. I love tweeting about games. So if you want to continue the conversation about that show or any of my other nerdy interests, head on over to my Twitter page at CMastersTalk. And of course, you can also find my entire body of work on my online portfolio, calebmasters.net. All right, gentlemen, I think it's time for us to go ahead and prehash next week's episode, Stormborn.
A Targaryen cannot be trusted.
The Mad King's daughter will destroy the realm.
We have an army, a fleet, and 3 dragons. We should hit King's Landing now.
All right, that was from the promo of next week's episode. And here's the synopsis. Daenerys receives an unexpected visitor. Jon faces a revolt. Tyrion plans the conquest of Westeros. And Samwell eats a piece of fruit. Man, I'm not sure what to make about the Samwell eating the fruit thing, but hey, Daenerys receives an unexpected visitor, guys. What I'm saying is Euron Greyjoy is coming. I promise. He's going there. It's going to happen.
I would love some more Euron.
I don't know
that would be fantastic.
I don't know what his plan is, but he'll be there.
I mean, I am a little surprised about Jon facing a revolt. I thought we'd settle all that crap, but here we are again.
Not with Sansa and Baelish there. It's not over. Again, remember, he's not rewarding the houses that have served him well, and I think that's going to be a problem. All right. Well, thank you so much to everyone who tuned into this week's recap and review of Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 1, Dragonstone. We can't wait until you rejoin us next week when we continue our podcasting adventures beyond the wall. I mean, but seriously, guys, if we were going to cast X-Men with Game of Thrones characters, I mean, Daenerys would definitely be Jean Grey, right? Can we agree?
I'm going to go with Storm. I think she'd be Storm.
Not Melisandre? No Melisandre Storm?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with Storm.
And is that going to mean Varys is Professor X, or do we put Tyrion in Professor X?
Varys is like the albino guy from Logan. That's Varys.